Jake, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, you're having a sickening week.
Yeah, week in Austin. The city's dope. I'm doing the Austin experience.
Yeah, you're doing the entire Austin experience. You did Rogan. That dropped yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. And then you did Kill Tony.
Yep.
Yeah, I've only been in the audience for that one,
That
so
was
you're already killing it.
Yeah, that was tough because he's so quick. It's like hard to even say anything. He's just go, go, go. But it made it easy. I just sat there and kind of watched him, said a couple words.
Were any of the actual comedians good?
I think like two of them, and then some other ones were just terrible, where it's just like kind of embarrassing.
Oh my God. Yeah. See, the thing with me and going to comedy shows is like I can't just go to one where there's like average comedians. I have to go straight to like a Joe Rogan show
Yeah.
where I know I'm going to consistently laugh because I feel like I'm waiting for them to not be funny.
You're more laughing at the comedians not being good because they come up, do a 1 minute bit, and most of them just totally tank, and then Tony just rips them apart.
Yeah, that's funny. But I feel like I get sad for them. Like I want to cry. I'm like, oh, that's so embarrassing.
Yeah, like I wanted to throw some digs in, but I'm like, you know what? I think Tony's getting them enough.
Yeah. Like we were talking to our friend last night at the party. We were at Michael Malice's house last night. And my friend Joel was talking to us about how he's doing stand up now. And I'm like, kudos to you because I'd rather fucking kill myself.
Yeah, I would never do stand up. Definitely. Like I can sit here, have a conversation fine, but trying to like talk in front of a crowd or stand up, I'm good on that.
Oh my God. Yeah. But you're enjoying Austin, and I'm doing my duty as an Austinite. I think that's the word for people who live in Austin. I've only been here for 6 months in pushing you to move here.
It's not a hard sell. My jiu-jitsu coach is already here. I already know, all the cool people around town. You're going to introduce me to Alex Jones.
Yeah, Alex
hopefully.
is coming in I think like 40 minutes.
Yeah, I think the only thing I haven't done now is meet Elon Musk while here.
I haven't done that either yet. Yeah, Michael hung out with him a few months ago, and I remember seeing the pictures, and I was like, oh, thanks for the invite.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I get it. I get it.
He's definitely seems like an interesting guy.
Yeah.
But I'm sure not as fun as hanging out with Alex Jones, but I would still love to meet him.
Fun is a word for Alex Jones. It's very like, it's always an experience with Alex, and he'll be in here, and who knows, I'm sure they'll be able to pick up on his voice when he's outside the studio. Like, I'm here. So I think you would fit in so well in Austin.
Yeah.
Because the thing about here is everyone has their own shit going on, and everyone's kind of like creating stuff, and I feel like you could move your scene here.
Yeah, it's a perfect mix between like conservative and liberal because I mean, I get lumped in as conservative, but I'm not. I've spent most of my life in San Francisco and New York, but those cities just change too much in a bad way. So I'm kind of in the middle. I love the creativity of the liberal, the food, that, but then I also want things to be a little cleaner, a little more. The liberals has gone too far. The woke stuff I can't deal with.
100%. Why do you think you get lumped in with being a conservative?
Just because off a few things, I was majorly anti COVID lockdowns. I think was a big one.
Because you have a brain.
Yeah, that was considered like early on from the very beginning. I was super anti-lockdown. I didn't really use Twitter early on though. I just started using Twitter during the lockdowns because I got so angry.
Yeah.
But from the very beginning, I was super anti-lockdown, and then the first 2 weeks even, I was so critical of Trump. Like, man, we should not be locking the country down. And then I think most people agree with me now, but at the time, everyone was just so gung-ho, lockdown.
Yeah, it was a weird moment because we were in California at the same time. You in San Fran, me in LA. So we had the worst two cities in California experiencing that shit. I feel like there's a very unique experience to living in San Fran, Seattle, LA, New York during the pandemic and during lockdowns that I feel like people in the middle of the country or the South or really most other places can't understand.
Yeah, no, businesses were closed down for like a year. I have a bunch of friends that have spent, so long, years of their life working to open these businesses and just shut down and ruined. And it's funny, they're saying the Black Lives Matter this time. A lot of my friends, are black and ethnic, own these businesses that are getting ruined by COVID, and the same people were the ones shutting them down.
100%. Like the COVID shit for me was a huge turning point because previously, like, I like what you said about enjoying like the artistic side of like the liberal mind, so to speak, because I'm like that as well. I think that one of the things the right really lacks is like an appreciation for art and creativity and, being abstract in some sense. They're very like literal and kind of boring, for being honest.
Right.
And so for a while, I was able to really tolerate LA and kind of the culture there because I was like, listen, it's fun.
Yeah.
There's interesting people. I just won't talk politics with them. But then the lockdowns happened and it was like, actually, there's no compromise here.
Yeah, it was just, they were so shut down. I naturally have a ton of energy. I can't sit around my house. And at that time, while I wasn't really doing any business projects, I was just running a gym. Like, I can't just sit around my house all day. So it was, I was about to lose my mind. And then I'd go out walking my dog. I'd be outside at the park. I'd be the only person with a mask on. People would be yelling at me, turning their backs when I'd walk by. I'm just like, I can't live here anymore.
But people don't get that because I was pretty vocal at the lockdowns when they're happening. Looking back, not as much as I wish I would have been. I wish I would have hit it even harder, but I did speak up against it. And I would notice that I would get an influx of people giving their feedback and being against me for having that opinion.
Yeah.
And I would notice like, well, where do you live? And I'd be like, oh, I live in Minnesota. Oh, I live in fucking, I don't know, Texas. And it's like, okay, you don't know what it's like then to be under an authoritarian government to the extent where they're telling you you're basically under house arrest. And also the people living in, you can attest to this, the people living in San Fran and LA, they don't just disagree with you that you should be in your house or disagree with you that you should be wearing masks and get vaccinated. They will get in your face about it.
Yeah.
Like they will sometimes touch you. There was an experience I had where I was getting into an elevator in my building and there was a grown ass man wearing a face shield and a mask, which first of all is so cringe. I mean, do what you have to do. Maybe he had AIDS. I don't know. Maybe he was compromised. But I got in the elevator and he started freaking out, flailing his arms. Don't come in, don't come in. And the way I am, it's like, if you tell me not to do something, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, same way.
So I pushed my way in and he pushed me as hard as he could out of the elevator.
Jesus.
And I was like, I've never had just some grown ass man put his hands on me.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. For me, I think I only had girls yell at me. I think maybe guys see me and don't want to say anything. Maybe, I don't look that intimidating, but maybe see the ears or something. But I had like definitely a few girls yell at me for not wearing masks. And I've had guys be like passive aggressive, like turn their back walking by. And it's just, it's a weird thing,
It's a weird thing. And I feel like there's almost like the psychosis that's happened because of it, in the sense of like, you saw they recently lifted the masks on planes.
Oh, thank God, because I fly like pretty much every week.
Yeah. When are you leaving town?
I leave tomorrow for a flight to Hawaii. So,
nice. What for?
Cornering one of my fighters. I've been coaching some fighters. I have a really good fighter, Patchy Mix, fighting out there for in the Bellator.
Oh, sickening.
Yeah.
So you get to fly without a mask.
Yeah, right.
That's
I've been flying mask free pretty much most of the time, but you never know when I would just take it off. And I used to get yelled at all the time, but the majority of the flight attendants have been leaving me alone the last like 6 months. Every now and again, I'd get one would come start yelling at me, but
really, how do they leave you alone? Because if my shit was even like, I would fall asleep on the plane and it would slip beneath my nose, and they're like shaking me to wake up to put it on.
I've had that happen too. So I guess I should. Probably about 50-60% of the time I would have it off. Other times they'd be nagging at me.
Oh, that's crazy.
But I find more of them are just getting over it and starting to leave me alone.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I was gonna say, like, so they lifted the mask shit on the planes, and just looking through the reactions on Twitter and stuff, and reactions to Delta tweeting it out, American Airlines, etc. And it's like the overwhelming majority of people are still in this mode where like they were so upset about it. They're like, I'm not flying Delta anymore. I'm not flying fucking Spirit. It's like, well, where are you going to fly then? Because they all lifted it.
Yeah, you see these people, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like they're the people that are online. So it can look like a lot of them, but I just don't think it's the real world. Kind of like, I'm sure you know this. I've just had hate mobs after me for things I've said about like trans and sports and stuff, but it's like not the real world. So it can seem like everyone's against me, but I'm like, most people agree with what I'm saying, not what like the thousands of people, cussing me out online are saying.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I get caught up in that because I've been doing YouTube and social media now for like 6 years.
Yeah.
And it's become my whole career, and I'm so engulfed in it that sometimes I forget that like, okay, the cartoon communists on Twitter are not necessarily every person. But it was hard to remember that when I lived in LA, because I would see that type of person in real life, kind of.
Because there's lots of them in LA, exactly. San Francisco in LA, there's a lot of those people.
Yeah.
Like I would run into it there a lot, the intolerance. But around the country, I think it's not as much as people think, unless you're in those places.
Especially in Texas. Everything's chill here. But it's like, for me, it's like, I saw the reactions, and even though I agree that it's not real life, I mean, there's still real people tweeting, and I'm like, did they expect it to never end? It had to end sometime, right? I mean, maybe not, but in their minds, but the idea that it's just supposed to go on for fucking ever.
Yeah, some of them are willing to accept it for like 10 years. And that was for me early on. I'm not even the smartest person, but I looked at it and said, this virus is not going away through it passes through. Like, we're not going to have effective vaccine for years. I was actually really surprised when it came out in a year. There was a second where I actually thought it worked, and I was like, wow, I was wrong. I can admit when I was wrong. But then after like 3 or 4 months, we started seeing it actually didn't work.
Yeah. And it was interesting how you would see people say things that 3 or 4 months later became acceptable to say, but they're being banned for it. So it's like, oh, can you spread COVID despite being vaccinated? If you said that in the beginning, you're banned, you're canceled, you're attacked, you're smeared. And then it's like, okay, so what are we doing now that everyone's spreading it and is vaccinated, you know?
Yeah.
And, disclaimer, not a doctor, not a health expert, but I'm also living in the real world.
Yeah.
And uh, as far as I can see, 90% of the people that I know that even have COVID in the past like month or so, they're all vaccinated.
Yeah, no, from what I've seen, it seems like the vaccine does nothing to stop it. Whether it does anything for hospitalizations or not, I don't know, but I don't consider myself high risk. I was never, I didn't want to get COVID, but I was never too worried about it. My thought was if I die from it, hey, I'm going to die anyways. Obviously, don't want to die, but the odds of COVID killing me are pretty slim.
100%. And like, I would also rather live with the chance of dying than live like I'm already fucking dead.
Exactly. That's what really was weird to me. Like, we're all going to die. I didn't realize people were so scared to die that they're willing to stay in their house for 3 years. I mean, there's people still staying in. It's been 2 years and there's people bitching that restrictions are ending.
We also have to remember it gives low status people an excuse and a reason to remain low status. So it's like you have to remember how many people in this fucking country are basement dwellers. They don't leave their house, they don't have shit going on, and suddenly they have every reason to embrace the nothing going onness.
That's an excellent point because like I have a very active life where I'm doing stuff, lots of friends, people don't. So to them, they're not going out anyways. So they get maybe angry we're going out. So they want us to stay in.
Yeah.
But to me, it was like, hey, you guys can stay in. You're not going to be in contact with me. Let me go out and live my life. You go live your life.
But it was also a bunch of hypocrites. Like I don't know if it was like this in San Fran, but like I would see all these like liberals, especially like in the LGBT community, all the gays were like the biggest mask and vaccine Nazis. But they were the first ones going to raves in downtown LA and getting fucked bareback on Grinder. Like, so you're not afraid of like STDs, but you're afraid of COVID? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I have hilarious. I have so many friends. I'd see them on Facebook ranting against like masks, and then I'd show up like at like a little hidden underground party, and they would be there snorting coke, sharing the same straw. And I'm the kind of person, my personality, I'd welcome call them out. Like, weren't you just ranting about masks, and now you guys are like no masks, doing coke together? Give me a break, you hypocrites.
I can't even fucking interact with people like that.
No, that's what I would just call them out. I think some weren't too happy about it, but I just couldn't help it when I
Good.
saw that. Just like, give me a break.
As
You're
you should.
online. You're online saying this, and you're so full of shit.
100%.
Some of you guys would be like, oh no, we're all the people quarantining. I'm like, no, we're the people not quarantining. We're the people that were probably likely to pass it around.
Yeah. Do you ever miss San Francisco?
I miss the old San Francisco. Yeah, it was a great, vibrant city. So much cool stuff going on, but it's turned into just a nasty, people are rude, not nice, scared, dirty, homeless, crime.
Yeah.
It's not, I miss the old San Francisco. That city doesn't exist anymore.
It's not Full House anymore.
Yeah.
At all. So I grew up in Northern California, and San Fran is like the LA of NorCal. So it's like when you want to go to like the big city, you go to San Fran.
Yep.
And so I have some of the best memories of my life, like with my parents when I was little, going to the city, and everything was a lot more beautiful. And I don't think it's just the nostalgia effect. I think there's definitely been a distinction.
There's been a clear decline. It always had problems, but they were like limited. There were smaller areas. There's 100% been a decline, and there used to be a vibrant nightlife scene there. It's just, it's 100% gone down.
And I feel like the homeless people are different there.
Oh,
Than LA. They touch you in San Fran.
Yeah, people don't understand when you say homeless. They think you're like when you shit on the homeless, you think you're being like some kind of bad person. These people aren't homeless. They're drug addicts. They're aggressive. They rob you. They come in your face. They yell at you. Being in San Francisco makes you hate homeless people. Sometimes I've gone to other cities and you see homeless people and you're like, oh, this guy's just down on his luck. I'll give him some money.
Yeah.
They're nice. They say hi. Like, sure, here's $20. You go to San Francisco, you start like hating these people because they're not good people.
See, I'm that person. Like here in Austin, especially when I see people that are homeless, it's just a different vibe. Like I feel much more open to giving them money. I'm that person who like pulls out a 20 and gives it and whatever, because I'm like, you know what, even if they are gonna use it for drugs, it's like maybe the drugs will make them feel better. Maybe their life is fucking shit. Maybe I would need some fucking drugs if I was homeless too. But yeah, and the homeless in LA were more so like they keep to themselves and you get to almost know them. But in San Fran, it's like they want to get to know you by grabbing you.
Yeah, I know. They are the worst homeless people. I've had to like front kick a couple to get away from me.
Oh, shit.
Get back.
You don't want to get front kicked by you either.
Yeah. I don't want to like touch them, so I don't want to hit them. So I'm just like, get away from me.
So you mentioned, and this is so funny because, so when did we first meet?
A few months ago through Michael, right? Yeah.
Oh,
you're
yeah, the
like,
party
we
that
haven't
we
known
went
too long.
to. Yeah, that
And you're
crazy
my first
Airbnb.
friend ever that's trans, by the way.
No, I know. And it was so funny because one of the things you said to me was like, people say I'm so transphobic, like, watch out. You're being sarcastic.
Yeah.
But people do say you're transphobic.
I get accused of being that a lot. And, not to lie, I was starting to get a little that way because all the trans activists are such bad people that it was starting to give me a a negative thing. So I'm actually glad I met you. So it gave me a different perspective to be like, okay, they're not all completely lunatics that are
Yeah.
just, it was just such, the people online that are activists are just pushing the worst, craziest stuff where I started being like, man, these people are
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, that goes
So,
back to what you said earlier, which is like online and real life.
mhm,
And you have to like kind of force yourself to remember like online is not real life.
mhm.
But then you kind of get it reinforced and you meet the ones that are like that in real life. But I saw you got into like a beef with, what's this trans bitch's name?
The
Uh,
one that
Alana,
fought, or
Alana McLaughlin.
is that the one that got in the fight or whatever?
Yeah, there
Yeah,
was like a controversy with you and that person. I made a
yeah,
video about that bitch too.
yeah,
So what was that? What
yeah.
happened?
Or he, whatever, went and like, I don't care if I'm transition, but like, but then she went and fought women's MMA and beat up a girl. I mean, in defense, I guess the girl knew and accepted the fight, but I still just don't think commission should be approving that. It's just not fair. You know, being an athlete my whole life, I know there's just things that, especially I think the transition wasn't that long on person. You know, so a year or two transition, you're going to have the testosterone, you're going to be stronger. You shouldn't be out there physically fighting women in sports. I think it's wrong. I
I
made a
agree.
comment about that, and I got a lot of hate for that. I had like thousands of messages.
Oh God.
People DM me, kill myself, and the weird part is it was a lot of like guys that were really like beta, weak looking guys. That's like, who are these people? Or like, are they?
That's
I
the
don't know if they're
thing.
gay or just trying to simp for girls or like what. Like you
What
ain't
kind of girls you simping
you ain't
for?
getting laid doing that, bro.
No. And
But
but that's the thing is like there's trans activists, there's trans people, and then there's white liberal busybodies
mhm.
who want to speak on behalf of not even just trans people, any group really, and
Yeah.
they'll come at you 20 times harder than any trans person.
Yeah, I think the trans activists are doing such a disservice to trans people
Yeah.
because it's like I said, I hate to admit it, but I was starting to have a negative opinion of trans people. And then
How
I
could
meet
you
you, and
not?
I'm like, then I meet you, and I'm like, oh, okay. I was just getting a false image from the internet. So they're doing way more damage than good.
How could you not? And
Mhm.
I get so frustrated with those people too that like
Yeah,
the just like lived out fucking just gross basement dwelling white dudes who are just so quick to like white knight for trans people and
mm,
they do way more harm than good. They're so fucking
mhm.
embarrassing. But the Alana thing, I remember going on Joe Rogan and we had actually a disagreement about this because we were talking about that and
Yeah,
people don't know Alana McLaughlin, MMA fighter, trans, think the pink hair and just like cracking the girl in the face. It's so
yeah,
disgusting to watch. But Joe's perspective was he's generally against trans women in women's sports in certain cases,
yeah,
like Fallon Fox is another one. We'll talk
mhm.
about that bitch too. But he was like, well, it was consensual because the girl agreed to fight. And my
Yeah.
thing was like, well, how consensual was it? Because I don't know. I'm not in that world,
You
not in the
can be
sports.
pressured into a fight for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Let me know because I feel like if you say no to a fight, does that negatively impact your career?
It can majorly. I mean, I don't know. It was a smaller show, so not as much. But in the UFC, it's really hard to turn a fight down.
Mm.
Luckily, the UFC hasn't signed any, trans women yet. But it's yeah, it can negatively affect your career for sure. You get a lot of pressure to turn down fights. I've never turned down a fight because if you do, they're gonna not be happy. And that's actually
Oh.
one of the great parts about MMA. Fighters don't avoid each other like they do in boxing because you're not supposed to turn down fights.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because it seems to me, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. You're saying I'm kind of not wrong about this, but I feel like in any industry, if you want to do the work and you want to be a part of it, then you just kind of, at least for a while, you kind of say yes to everything.
Yeah, exactly. This girl
Yeah.
was probably trying to make it and probably got pressured into it. So I'm with you. I respect Joe and I understand his perspective, but I disagree with it.
Yeah, me too. I think back to like if I can relate it to even my career. Like I remember the first couple years of my career, I would say yes to kind of everything because I was just so hungry
Hmm.
and I was trying to get up. I was like, actually, a good example was Alex Jones interviewing me year one of being on. A lot of people would maybe say no because it'd be a bad look, and not that I
Yeah.
regret it at all. I think Alex was a good person, but um, people were like, "Oh, this is a bad move," but I'm like, how am I going to say no to being interviewed and being in this industry? So I feel like it might be the same for her. Like, how could she say no?
Exactly. And fighters, we always want to prove how tough we are. So you're always like, you never want to be like, oh, I can beat anyone. So she's probably just like, oh, I can take this person. And it just wasn't. The sad part watching it was she was clearly the more skilled fighter, but the other one was way stronger and more physical.
And that kind of shows you right there that it's like if she can be technically more skilled on that level, then the fact that she still lost.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's just exactly. It just doesn't make sense to me. They would leave that stuff alone. I think a lot of the issues would go away. That and the kids are the ones that is causing the problems.
The kids is a big thing. I could literally cry thinking about that.
Yeah, it's just so sad because some of these parents are pushing on these little confused kids. That's not what they are. They might just be want to put on a dress. They might be a little gay boy. Like, who knows? Just like encourage them the opposite. And if it really turns out later in life they are, then embrace them and treat them good. I'm 100% about, treating trans people like 100% everyone else.
Yeah, but that's what's so, I get so frustrated with this because, people call you transphobic
Mhm.
and people want to sling these words at you that, frankly, like, when it comes to like racism
Mhm.
accusations, transphobia, homophobia, like these are actually some of the, if we take away all the politicization of it, these are actually some of the worst things to be called because it basically means you're
Exactly.
a fucking asshole. It means you treat people less than you and you think that you're higher than them. And that's not a good quality. So the fact that it's thrown around so easily and the fact that someone that, we've hung out a couple times, I know you're a really
Mhm.
nice person. The fact that someone like you can be called that, I think what people don't understand in that community
Mhm.
is like, they don't understand because it's so insular. They don't understand how this shit comes across to people like you who are
Yeah.
observing from afar and you see it kind of touching your world, the MMA world. And like, what do you think about like Fallon Fox? Because she's even worse. They seem to like get off on it. That's the part.
Yeah, I think they both do. I think Lana does too. They get
Yeah.
off on it, and I think Fallen Fox posted, I don't know what, something like bragging about beating up girls, and it's just like she's even more extreme.
Yeah. That to me, I know there's like stereotypes about the trans stuff aside, MMA fighters, like there's stereotypes about every industry, but that industry is like, oh, maybe they're violent in real life, they're
Hmm.
like intense in real life. My experience meeting you and a couple
Hmm.
others in the industry is actually it's usually the opposite.
Yeah,
But they seem to be like relishing in it.
is how with fighting is how it works. A lot of the lower level fighters have a lot of attitude and the bad rep. Most of the elite
Oh,
top
really?
fighters are really chill and mellow. I think because maybe our personality types to get that good and all the years doing it. It's a lot of like the new fighters and the wannabe ones are the ones that act all like stupid and aggressive.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's
Like the whole, 'cause didn't she like crack someone's fucking skull?
I think so. It's just yeah, like when it's just fighting, it's absurd. I mean, all sports, but fighting is the most extreme example of it. Shouldn't be happening.
Right. You think of like, okay, we can have an argument about like soccer.
Yeah.
We can have an argument about like, I don't know, baseball. Like,
Hmm.
actually, baseball might be a decent example of one where it's like, they're
Yeah,
worse.
I don't really care that much about baseball.
I don't care about either. Like, I don't care about really any sports, really. But then you think of like combat sports.
Yeah, it's
And it's like, what is really the argument here that a biological male can just like crack a bitch in the face?
mhm.
It's like, that's
And the
horrible.
same people would freak out if a guy had domestic violence charge. You know what I mean? That's like the most like one of the most looked down upon things. But then
Yeah.
they're okay with this. That's the weird part.
Yeah. And people just watch it. It's almost like some fucked up spin off of like Hunger Games. It's like, why do you want to? And the other thing is like, why don't they fight each other?
Yeah, right. They could have Fallon Fox and that other one fight.
Yeah, if there seems to be so fucking many of them now, maybe not in MMA, but just in general, it's like, why are they not competing against each other?
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing: is people are like, oh, it doesn't help. It's everything's fair, but you've never seen trans the opposite way go and do well in men's sports.
Look at that.
Exactly.
Seems kind of
So all
self-explanatory.
all the trans men compete in women's sports still.
That's a good question. Would you feel comfortable fighting a female to male trans person?
Sure. I mean, they allow them to do testosterone and shit. If she wants to get in the ring with me, go ahead. I'd feel a little weird to be honest,
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's interesting
but
because
I know she has zero chance. I wouldn't be too worried.
yeah. Um, I'm interested in like psychologically where you get to the point where you're like, I want to be a fighter professionally. Because like I grew up street fighting, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Like I grew up like heavily bullied, so I had to learn how to
Mhm.
fight. Like I would get jumped all the time. Like in
Oh,
fact,
wow.
I never knew proper technique. I would just be fucking fighting for
Just throwing.
just
Yeah.
throwing blows, whatever. But how did you get to the point where you're like, this is what I want to do?
I think I just grew up kind of fighting a lot, poor and kind
Oh,
of
okay.
rougher area. So we'd get in a lot of street fights. And then I wrestled in college. I never thought I wanted to be a fighter, but I was a good fighter. And then I was in college wrestling and I met this guy. You don't know fighting probably, but this guy, Chuck Liddell, one of the most famous
Oh, I know
fighters
him.
of all time. Okay, yeah, you
Not
know
personally,
him.
but
So I met him. He was like local town famous, but not famous yet. And then I went in the gym to spar him. Thought he looked all goofy with his, mohawk and stuff. Thought I was gonna beat him up, and he just beat the crap out of me. So I'm like, oh man, this
shit,
is
Chuck Liddell beat the shit out of you.
yeah. So I'm like, I was a punk. I deserved it. But then I just started following him around, being like, hey, can I work out with you, teach you? And he kind of became my mentor. And, then all of a sudden I seen him start making a little money, which was probably like 30 grand at the time. But I was so poor. I'm like, wow, you can get rich fighting. So I'm like, I want to do this too.
Oh shit. So, well, that's interesting then. Like we grew up a similar way. I grew up in a really rough area too, very poor. And like, if you think about it, we kind of ended up similar in the sense that like I'm still fighting all the time. It kind of
Yeah.
prepared me to like fight the way I fight now, which is like, politically, and like that's like
Yeah.
pretty fucking brutal too. It's like I grew up fighting, so did you. That's crazy.
Yeah. At what age did you become trans or come out or?
Oh, I came out at 19, transitioned at 20. But that's the difference as well. You think of like Alana McLaughlin and stuff. It's like that bitch transitioned at what, like 30?
Yeah, like recently.
And you
I
see
think it was a Navy
pictures.
SEAL before, and like, come on.
Yeah, that bitch before she transitioned looked like way tougher than you, no shade.
Yeah.
Like just like fucking huge. Yeah, so that's the difference.
Was that like a crazy coming out and transitioning? Did you get a lot of hate or support, or that must have been a?
Well, that's the misconception. Like, I mean, so stuff has changed so much.
Mhm.
Like when I grew up, it was a different culture in the sense of like just the fact that I was like a faggot,
Yeah.
basically
So
growing
everyone
up.
assumed you were gay, probably, right?
Yeah, but it was also like that was before like Prop 8 and gay marriage and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And so it was a different culture in the sense of like I was in kindergarten
Mhm.
getting called a faggot, and kindergarten fighting, maybe not kindergarten fighting physically,
Yeah.
but just throughout my life. And there was a lot more like real anti-LGBT
Yeah.
hate. And it's crazy how society like can never just find a happy medium, that now it's like so celebrated to the point where it's so cringe
Mhm.
and pushing it on kids. And it's like, why can't we just get to a point where it's like not celebrated or hated? It's just you're a
Exactly.
fucking
We're
person.
all treated like equals. It's like it's not your identity. It's just something you happen to be. I mean, obviously,
Exactly.
it'll get talked about in politics, of course, a lot. But it's just you're a normal person. I've realized hanging out with you, just a normal person who happens to be that way.
Exactly. So it's interesting how people just fluctuate between like the extreme and then the other extreme. And it's like, I don't know when people are gonna fucking find the
Yeah,
middle.
it happened with the Black Lives Matter a lot too. There's very little
Hmm.
racism now. Not there's no racism, but I think we're living in the most least racist, time period generation ever, where everyone got along fine as brothers. And they started pushing the Black Lives Matter narrative, recreating racism on both
Yes.
sides, getting black people not to like white people not to like black people, pushing all this hate and division again.
Well, maybe tell me if you agree with this. I feel like the I'm a little tipsy, so I might not word this correctly. The supply of hatred doesn't meet the demand. Genuine, like anti-race or gender or trans hate doesn't really meet the supply.
That is extremely true. I don't know if you followed the fake hate crime hoaxes. There's just been almost like 99% of the hate crimes reported in the media, the ones that at least catch attention, turn out to be hoaxes.
Hmm.
This guy Andy No, I think it is, Asian reporter,
Yeah,
covered it really well, which they hate him for it and beat him up. But
he gets the most hate out of anyone I've like almost ever seen
yeah, it's
online.
crazy.
He is so hated. Like I saw a story where he was did you see recently he was like supposedly in a bar
Uh
and
huh.
got like chased out or whatever, but it was like a different Asian man.
Oh Jesus, I've seen it in Antifa. They're going after Asian men in Portland, thinking it was him. And it's crazy. He's like a gay Asian guy, and they're like
Oh, he's
thinking he's
gay?
he's a Nazi. Yeah, he's
That's
gay as
even worse.
well.
What the fuck are they doing?
Right? And I think he's like a Nazi, but he's a gay Asian guy who's just covering Antifa, showing the terrible stuff they do, and then they want to like kill him for it. Like literally, they
Disgusting.
want him like dead. There's like it's all over Portland. It's written "Kill Andy No," and or, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but
Yeah, that is. But how do you convince yourself that you're the good guy or you're on the side of righteousness or, goodness when you're doing that? That's what's so crazy to me. Am I wrong? Or I think I saw something about you like fighting Antifa.
yeah, that was a few years ago. I was in Berkeley. Someone like DM'd me. I think he was the guy Milo. Remember the guy Milo? He was a gay guy who was like a
Yiannopoulos?
provocateur. I think it's the
Yeah,
guy. I think he was gay. I think he was dating Milo or something.
he's off the map now, but yeah.
Yeah, the guy invited me to a speech. I'm like, sure, I'll go by. I mean, so I was going to check it out, stop by Berkeley, and then I walk by and there's just brawls all over the street, and I see some guy just getting beat up. He had a Trump hat. People were just welling on him with sticks. I'm like, what the hell? So I ran over to pull people off, and then they go, he's a Nazi, get me. They started running at me, so I dropped
They called you a
once.
Nazi.
Yeah, I dropped one, stood off to face off. I think someone hit me, but it didn't hurt at all. Started throwing punches. Then they started going and be like, oh, he's not a Nazi. He's not a Nazi. As soon as they could see I could fight, and I'm just like, what the hell?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's
So I grabbed the
hilarious.
guy off the ground. He was covered in blood. I threw him in a couple Middle Eastern guys came and helped me get him into their store, shut the store door, and they locked it. And then I went back out, and the guys were like, knock the windows out, knock the windows out. And then someone's like, no, don't. It's a minority-owned store. I'm like, wait, so if it was a white-owned store, he would knock the windows out? It's just like, that's just so weird. Like all races should be treated exactly the same.
What a concept.
Yeah, right. And that's always I think in fighting is great because it's all about what you perform. So there's like zero racism, and I shouldn't say zero, but close to zero racism in fighting jujitsu. So I come from that world where we're all brothers, all all absolute equals. So it's weird to me seeing all this weird racial division.
Yeah, and especially so did you grow up in the Bay Area?
I grew up in a small town, like Mountain Ranch, like about 2.5 hours outside of San Francisco.
Oh, okay. That's Northern California still, right? Or no?
Kind of, it's like east of San Francisco, Northern California, though. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then we can probably see eye to eye on this. It's like when you grow up in California culture, it's like people say this is cringy to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. I don't give a fuck. You don't really see race when you grow up in California because you're aware that there is maybe racial tensions and stuff, but like it's such a more of a laid back culture in the sense of like you don't really care about that shit.
No, there's no one. Everyone treats each other the same. We'd make little jokes at each other in the gym. We would talk shit, but like in good nature. And it was like just we always treat each other exact equals. Then it changed. The funny thing, the weird part is, this popped in my head. A black guy from my school, was a friend of mine. I saw like during the Black Lives Matter, he's posting on Facebook being like, no one ever treated bad. We were all equals. And then a bunch of white girls from the school start chiming in, being like, they never treated you the same, this and that. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? These guys were my brothers. You're telling me I was treated different, and I'm telling you I wasn't.
That's the thing. It's these white liberal busybodies. Like, and when I say that, like some conservatives get mad, like, why do you say they're white? I'm like, but they are.
No, it's just weird seeing these white girls tell my black friend that we treated him as like an other or one of them. Or I'm like, what is he talking about? And then he was saying the same thing. It's like, no, they did not. They treated me like we were all equals.
Yeah. How are you going to tell me my story?
Yeah, you're telling me my friends, were treating me bad when they weren't. So it was weird seeing that. And I saw multiple. I mean, that was from my school, but I saw like multiple stuff like that on Facebook where people like white girls telling black guys their story.
Yeah. I mean, I relate to that so heavily. Like, so I posted a picture, and I'm sure we'll get this when this drops as well. Like when I posted a picture with Alex Jones, it was mostly positive, but
Yeah.
there was that 10 to 20% that were like, he doesn't even see you as human. He hates you, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, how are you going to tell me that my friend hates me?
Exactly.
How do you know?
He wouldn't be hanging out with you if he hated you. And that's
100%. And people will say the same thing about you.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, so how does that work in your mind? People really think they know, like, but that goes to the heart of liberalism.
Yeah,
which
they'll
is
say
they
I'm using
think
you
that
maybe, or who
Yeah.
knows. They'll make up something.
Yeah.
I'll still definitely be called transphobic.
Oh yeah, this isn't gonna cure the transphobia, especially
No.
if they call me transphobic. I'm fucking trans. But that goes to the heart of liberalism, is the way they view groups of people is they have ownership over them.
Mhm.
So they'll tell your black friend, actually, no, you're wrong. All your white friends hate you because they think they own your black friend.
No, it's true. But the Democrats are massively losing minority support, black support, Mexican support, Muslim support. Like a lot of my friends, the ethnic ones that were Democrats are switching over from the woke stuff, and that's happening. You look at the numbers and see that's happening.
Well, that's interesting too, because I think like, okay, so I'm 28 now. Not old, but I've been old enough to witness now several administrations from each side. I lived through Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden now. And it's interesting because whichever side loses the election suddenly gets so much more unified. And then the side that wins, there's a certain portion of them, they're going to splinter off and be like, wait, maybe this isn't the best thing. So I'm seeing even a lot of liberals being like, actually, this shit's going way too fucking far.
Yeah.
So I predict it's going to be kind of a slaughter for the Democrats in November. I could be wrong.
No, I think so. Unfortunately, the Republicans aren't much better. I mean, at this point, I'll vote that way because the Democrats are so awful. But it's like there's not very many good choices on either side.
Yeah. That's kind of how I feel like. So, and you can probably relate to this just being a public figure in general, even though obviously our careers are so different. Like sometimes when you're a public figure and you get called certain things, I don't mean like the slurs and stuff, but you get labeled certain things like, oh, Blaire White's a conservative trans person, or Jake Shields is conservative. You almost start to like take those labels on and almost like make a subconscious agreement with that and be like, okay, maybe I am. But the more I think about it, I'm like, am I though?
Yeah, exactly. I get lumped in as conservative, but there's a lot of things where I mean, not really. I'm not what old school conservative would be considered, I guess. And it's but you're in a weird spot where you actually probably get some hate from some of the old school type conservatives. I've seen people like hating on you online and stuff before that were conservative, and it's like why is that necessary?
Yeah, it's kind of like, what are you doing? But I get it. You know what I mean? There's the old school, and then there's kind of what the party's becoming now. But the more I think about it, like, I'm not fucking conservative. I don't live my life by, I'm not religious. I'm not, I'm social liberal on some things. Like, I don't want people to have freedoms restricted. But I've also, and you can attest to this, I've also lived my entire life in California. I understand what it is to live under Democrat leadership. I've lived in LA, which is a blue city and a blue state. and I understand what that means. And I live in Texas and I see the difference. And I'm like,
Hmm.
listen, if it's just a matter of voting for the lesser of two evils, then the Republicans do have my vote for now. I don't care.
Yeah, no, I think living in San Francisco, you see the decay of these hard liberal cities. So you see the policies where they've swung way too far one direction. And I think you can swing too far the other direction too. But what's happening is a lot of places have swung too far left. And you need that balance because, the liberals, like we've said before, bring in the art, the party, the music. I'm not for cracking down on fun, but you're
Yeah.
also for, I want places clean and safe.
Well, that's the thing is like in reality, the Democrats are the ones that are cracking down on fun. They're the ones that are like, you can't have parties now. You can't
Right.
fucking like hang out with people anymore. I mean, it's kind of over now, the COVID shit
Yeah.
for now. I'm sure they'll bring it
Yeah,
back.
we could bring it back. Who
Yeah.
knows?
That's what I like about Austin though, because it's a blue city, the bluest city in Texas, red state. So you kind of do get that like healthy mix of like, okay, there's a lot of libs here,
Hmm.
but the difference is they don't have that same power to
Exactly.
like control your life. So like they're kind of not powerless here, but they have a lot less power. So it's like a good balance.
Yeah. No, and I like the mix because, like I said, I've kind of grown up in liberal cities, but fighting is more of a conservative thing. So I've always been around both, and I prefer it that way. But what happened, San Francisco just started turning where they hated you if you voted for Trump, hated this, and it's just I started seeing too much hatred. I'm like, I gotta get out of this place.
Yeah. Do you like Vegas better?
Yeah, I don't want to be there long term. It's good temporarily, because I'm in the fight business, so that's the booming spot for that. And it was an easy move. I have so many friends, but I mean, I like Austin better than Vegas, to be honest.
Move here.
Yeah, that's
I
a
couldn't
good
imagine
chance.
living in Vegas. It's so intense. I mean, granted, I only go there to party,
Yeah.
which is different, but I couldn't imagine living there either because I feel like everyone is there to party.
Yeah, and then all my friends are always visiting. They want to go like rage. And I'm like, man, I live here. I can't go out and party with you for 3 days straight. I'll go out one night. I'm not going out 3 days in a row to the clubs.
Yeah. I have a question about the trans MMA thing. We'll have to go back. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll edit back,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. But I think it's important people know this. What is the word in the MMA world? What's the talk about this kind of shit? Because oftentimes, like I said, the trans community is so insular, they don't understand how it comes across. So what do like other guys in the field or women, like what do they say when they're not under the pressure of saying the PC thing
Yeah.
online or in public?
I haven't heard one person in the MMA world support it, men and women. I think the women are finally. I'm starting to see women starting to speak out. Originally, women were actually, I think, scared to speak out on some of this trans stuff because they didn't want to be called bigots and stuff. But I think more recently they started finally getting the courage. Like some old things I would post, I would notice like girls wouldn't even like the post, but they'd probably agree. But recently, I
Yeah.
think I think they realized they're gonna have to start speaking up. After like that swimming thing, they're like, okay, this is
That one was bad.
this is taking a little too far.
Yeah. Have you noticed or experienced a like negative ramification for speaking out? Because um, when I was researching you today, I saw like a couple articles about the Alana McLaughlin thing, and the articles were such bullshit. There was one that wrote like, now that it was at the end of the article, and it was like, now that Jake Shields has ended his transphobic rant, he's back to his anti-COVID vaccine rant. I'm like, this is such blatant fucking bias, disgusting.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I don't go like read up on myself because stuff like that like doesn't even make me mad. It's just like funny. I know
Sorry, I actually don't like telling people certain things are written
Yeah.
about. I don't want to like.
no, it doesn't bother me.
Okay,
It
good.
doesn't surprise me at all. I just don't go read up myself because reading that stuff's pointless. But the media has lost all credibility to most people. I think any people I want to be friends with knows the media is a complete joke. So that stuff doesn't really bother me.
That's the thing. Like people ask me all the time, like, how do you feel about like hit pieces being written about you and whatever? I mean, and it's kind of like, well, I have to ask myself, is anyone who I respect going to read this and believe it? Answer's really no.
No.
Are any of my peers going to read it and believe it? No, because I really only hang out with people who also hate the fucking media. So, but you haven't noticed any negative career?
No, like
Good.
it's what's crazy is I've been getting, I don't know if it's related or not. I started speaking up. I've been getting more opportunities, more business guys
Good.
wanting to do stuff with me, and some of it might be related, some of it might not. But I just think a lot of people feel exactly how I do and you do. They're just kind of scared to say it because they're businesses. But I'm fortunate where I'm self-employed and say what I want. If I lose one job, whatever,
That's
like
important.
maybe someone like ESPN that I was talking to, they're not going to hire me. But
Super corporate.
what,
Like
they
yeah.
don't pay good anyways.
I think the MMA world is probably just from the outside looking in on the spectrum of left to right, maybe a little more right than like the swimming world, the fucking soccer world. That might be a little bit more receptive to that opinion than others,
It's definitely extremely anti-woke and which it was kind of nice seeing that, having, that's been my community for so many years. And, I've always got along with everyone great. But when all this stuff started pushing in recently, all the trans trying to fight, the BLM never picked off in fighting, despite being a ton of black fighters. There was maybe one or two that wore it out.
Wait, what is it with the BLM?
The BLM stuff that was being pushed so heavy with all the sports. like all the sports were kneeling, like football,
Oh,
basketball,
yeah.
like everyone was kneeling for the national anthem and doing all that, and that never really came into fighting, despite being a ton of black fighters.
Good. I mean, that was another thing. It's like during like 2020 when you're seeing Nancy Pelosi kneel and shit like that. And then I'm looking at my black friends and they're all like, oh, this is so cringe. Because I'd be fucking
Hmm.
cringing if people were kneeling for trans people. Were like, oh, this is so embarrassing.
Right? How embarrassing was that picture? It's probably when you're talking about they're wearing like these African shirts, kneeling. It's just like, oh my god,
Yeah, it's like, are
how
you
cringe
aware
are
that the
you?
people you're fighting for have never lived in Africa?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
but that's such a like liberal mindset. It's like you think you're supporting like a black guy in Chicago by wearing African garb. It's like
Hmm.
that black guy in Chicago has no connection. I mean, maybe not no,
Yeah.
but like a very little connection to. He never lived in fucking Africa, bitch.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if it's true or not, but someone told me the garbs they were wearing was like one of the tribes that were the biggest like slave pushers too. So there's like the irony of it. So maybe someone did it on purpose that gave it to him as like a joke.
I wouldn't be
That would be
surprised.
pretty funny if you were giving them the shirts and you're like, okay, which Africans had the most slaves? I'll give them those ones.
Yeah, it was crazy the amount of like violence that was permitted in 2020. I think I was traumatized by it because you said you fought Antifa, and I was one of those people that I felt like had a really early understanding of what Antifa was before it was like
Mhm.
commonly known as like, oh, these are the fucking freaks that come out and beat people up for political reasons. Because early on in my career, I was doing live events, and I still do them sometimes. I'm doing one this weekend, but I think it was like 2018 that I did a talk, and all these fucking Antifa came and they were protesting me, and they were carrying what's the thing, bike locks.
Oh yeah, 'cause they hit you with bike locks and stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wait, so these people that are pro-trans
Or attacking a trans
and
person.
anti-bigot are coming up to a trans person event with fucking bike locks. I mean, that could kill you.
Mhm.
You crack someone with that, you're gonna die. Maybe
Yeah,
not die, but you'll get
yeah,
fucked
I was
up.
definitely bothered by my liberal friends that were defending Antifa because I saw them firsthand. I think these people didn't realize, they were out like actually physically trying to hurt people that with different opinions, and it's not Nazis they're after. They're after people like you, people like me, people that have slightly
Yeah.
different opinions.
I don't think they'd even have the bravery to go after actual Nazis.
No, that's what Nazis will fuck them up.
100%. That's the fucking crazy part. Then you have like
Mhm.
Kamala and the entire DNC bailing these people out. And it's like, I remember I have this vivid memory of like escaping LA, literally going to a
Mhm.
cabin in the woods for literally 2 weeks because it just wasn't safe to get. I lived in the
Yeah,
middle of Hollywood.
it was scary. Like the whole
How was
LA
San
was
Fran?
under attack and stuff. I couldn't believe seeing them some of those videos of like Santa Monica and Hollywood. They just
Yeah.
let it. The cops just stood down and let people just attack people on the streets, beat them, knock out windows. It's just like unreal. They allowed that.
That's the shit that radicalizes you.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, so I'm supposed to believe that, you're raised in this country to believe to an extent that the establishment has your best interest in mind, that the cops are there to protect you, the government's there to have your back. And it's like, okay, I'm watching my city be burned down.
Mhm.
It's not safe to return home. And the cops have ordered to stand down.
Exactly.
And Kamala Harris, the potential VP at the time, is bailing these motherfuckers out.
Hmm.
What the fuck is happening?
I never owned a gun. That's when I went out and bought a gun. I'm like, yeah,
Okay.
this is not safe.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any guns prior, and now I have like 15.
Right.
Maybe not 15,
Texas,
but I have,
you're,
like-
you're the best place for guns.
Yeah, 100%. I have a fucking bunch. So you were raised, this is one of the more interesting
Yeah.
things about you. You were raised vegetarian or vegan your whole life?
Vegetarian, I was raised.
Okay. And you were vegan for how long?
I've been vegan a couple times. I think the longest for about 6 months. It's hard switching over.
Oh, okay.
So it's and that's why I'm not one of those like hardcore, vegetarian pushes it because I realize it's easy for me because I grew up that way. So for me, it's easy. But when I switch to vegan, it's tough because then I miss cheese, miss eggs. So I understand how hard it is for people to quit meat.
Yeah. Were you raised vegetarian for ethical reasons, health reasons? What was the...
Mostly ethnical. My parents were hippies, which they lived in some crazy hippie commune for a while where everyone was
Oh.
vegetarians. But they moved when I was like born, so I never lived there. So then, I just grew up that way and became natural. And I mean, I do like animals. I don't like especially like the factory farming. It's disgusting, like how terrible, like they treat these animals. Like the pigs are locked in these little crates. They're basically tortured, like just crammed together, cut
Yeah.
the chicken's beaks off. I think it's disgusting and
It's fucked
terrible.
up.
I think people should be allowed to eat meat, but there should be some regulation on how the animals are treated.
Yeah, it's one of those conundrums for me ideologically in the sense that like I'm generally anti-regulation.
Hmm.
I'm anti-big government, but then I think about what's happening and like, so I was vegan. People know this, but I was vegan for about 10 years,
Mhm.
mostly as a teenager and then my early 20s. I have a vegan tattoo. vegan. It's
Nice.
embarrassing. I tried to get it lasered off, and it
But
has a raised scar now. It's just, ugh. But anyways, I was vegan, and it was for ethical reasons. You know who Gary Yourofsky is?
I'm not sure.
He's like one of the biggest like vegan ethical philosopher type of people, and he like woke me up one day. People's perspective is different. Woke up,
Yeah.
cool, but and I became vegan for 10 years, but I was a radical vegan. I was the kind that was like, you're not going to lunch with me if you're eating meat, if you're eating cheese, if you're eating eggs. But I gave y'all a bad
You're the ones,
day.
they're the ones that give me a bad rep. People are like, oh, you're a vegetarian.
I had purple hair at the time too.
Oh.
So I was the worst fucking person. I was the worst. I even
Yeah.
did it to my mom. I would tell my mom, like, we're not eating together unless you.
It was the purple hair.
it was a dark period in my life. But so do you ever want to potentially go vegan even longer? And do you get judged for that? Because I feel like in the MMA world, there's a crossover where people I feel like maybe are like super pro meat and like anti.
Yeah.
Do you get judged for it?
Not really. I'll get little comments here and there, but I think I'm pretty respected in the MMA community. I've actually have a lot of guys, ask me questions about trying to eat less meat or going vegetarian.
Oh, okay.
There's been some other fighters I trained with switch vegetarian because they're like, oh, I want to try it. So I always tell the guys like, hey, don't do it overnight. You can if you want, but I would recommend like maybe first drop down to eating meat twice a week and see how you feel, and then slowly cut it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes if the change is too drastic, it makes people feel weak.
Yeah, and I like that you I saw a tweet a couple weeks ago where you were just so unabashed about it. You were like, people are so mad about how we're treating dogs and cats in China, but look what we're doing to pigs and chickens.
Yeah, because there's all those videos of like, the dogs getting beat to death and then like crushed in like cages, which is it's disgusting. Which I hate it because I love dogs, cats not so much. But yeah, we do the exact same thing to pigs and chickens, and they say pigs are actually smarter than dogs.
Yeah, if you ever hung out with a pig, it's
Mhm.
very hard to want to eat a fucking pig. At least
Mhm.
for me, like I've been around pigs and I'm like, oh, so everything's a lie. These are actually potentially better pets than dogs. They're smarter, and it's like it's so sad what happens, but it's weird because there's this crazy cognitive dissonance, and people get so closed off to hearing it. I'm sure, like even us talking about it right now,
Yeah.
like there's probably so many people that are like, I don't even want to fucking hear this. But that's the thing with so many truths, right? Because
Yeah.
even if you are pro meat, pro eating meat, which I eat meat, I'm not vegan anymore, but even if you believe all that, you kind of can't deny that the way we treat animals in factory farms is one of the most heinous, almost like crimes of humanity in history.
I think that's almost why people get so mad when you bring it up and they jump at you, because I think deep down most people know it's disgusting and wrong and they don't want to admit it. So they tend to like, oh, they'll start yelling at you or making jokes like, oh, bacon's good. But it's like, we could treat the animals better. If we're going to eat them, we could let the pigs live like, in some actual pens where they can walk around and play and then kill them. We don't need to let them live in these crates where they can't turn around. And it's just, it's a terrible thing. They've banned a lot of these places. It's illegal for anyone to record videos. They don't want anyone seeing what's really going on there.
That's how you know it's fucked up.
Yeah, I think it's a felony to record any video and publish it from any of those meat factories.
That kind of tells you everything you really need to know right there. Like any industry that you're not allowed to, it's like, come on, dude. Like it's fucked up. And people have so many arguments against it. Like, how do you get this is going to be the number one question people hate being asked, but like, how do you get your protein?
Yeah, no, I'm asked that all the time. But like, I don't even really think about it, to be honest. I eat a good amount of like beans and stuff. I eat eggs occasionally, but I just hardly think about it. And the thing is, if I was weak, it'd be different. But everyone that trains with me is always like, holy crap, you're strong. So
Yeah, what's the argument? You're still a fucking fighter and you're still like whooping ass. So it's like, is it really that fucking unhealthy?
exactly. And I thought about eating meat a few times because trainers being like, you got to eat meat, you'll be even stronger. But it's just, I tried eating it, but my body just rejected it.
Well, that's the thing. Would you be stronger? I don't know.
No, that's what I wish. I would love to know that. And that's why I was like, oh, maybe I should eat meat for a second and try and see if I'm stronger. But I ate meat a couple times and I got physically sick and just eating it. In my mind, I would take a bite and be like, oh, I can't do this.
Especially if you were raised, it's like, it's almost like eating, I don't know, like an alien or something. Your body doesn't know how to process it.
Yeah, like I would get physically sick after I ate it and stuff too.
Yeah. What's your position on like hunting? Because I know that a lot of people's workaround is like, okay, I don't support animal factory farming, but I'm still not going to be vegan because I'm just going to hunt my shit, which is also, that's based on where you live. You can't hunt in LA or San Francisco, but.
Yeah, it's a tough one. A lot of my good friends are actually super into hunting and, they're invited me, but I'm just like, man, I can't just go kill an animal for no reason out in the wild. And I guess, if you are going to eat meat, it's way more humane than eating factory farm meat. But it's also sad these animals are out there living, going out there and hunting them and killing them.
I know. And then I can hear people's arguments, well, then you get overpopulated. And it's like, well, if that's what nature wants to do, maybe let what nature wants to do happen.
Yeah, no, the overpopulation one makes a little bit of sense, I guess. So,
Yeah, it's fucked up. I have this really vivid memory of being a kid, and my grandpa was a hunter, and I used to help him in his orchard and his farm and stuff. And um, there was a bird in the sky. This is such a horrible story.
mm,
There was a bird in the sky, and he was like, he was like trying to teach me how to hunt and shit. And he shot it out of the sky. I don't know what kind of bird it was, a blue jay or some
mhm,
shit. And it fell to the ground. And I immediately was like, oh, no, 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 this is fucked up.
mhm.
And then we walked over to it to see if it was dead or alive. It was there, like convulsing, twitching,
Yeah.
suffering. It wasn't fully dead. And my grandpa like stepped on its head to kill
Oh,
it. And I'm like, okay, this bird was just going about its fucking life. You wanted to shoot it out of the sky. It didn't die, so you're stepping on its head.
mhm.
And his argument was like, well, I don't think they feel pain like we do. I'm like,
Yeah, of course they do.
that's stupid.
Yeah, it's obvious they do by the fact they're squirming, or you feel animals will like scream. So they definitely do. It's like you say, it's a tricky one because I get it. You know, people are so used to eating meat, but it's for me, it's a hard one. Something I don't need to do.
Yeah, 100%. And I get that there's also like a sport involved in it. But
Yeah,
that even,
it's a little weird, like sport killing. I think part of it though, people like going out in the nature. 'Cause I know some of my friends they go out backpacking. That's why they love it so much. They're out for a couple days hiking, hunting. So that's part of the thrill.
yeah. Do you get a lot of groupies being a fighter?
You get a few. Unfortunately, like 98% are men. So you get like
Oh, yeah, you
dudes
said that
super
last night.
super
Yeah.
excited running up to you. But then you get but then girls see guys talking to you and like, oh, who's that?
That's kind of like I think of like it's different obviously, very different, but like the kind of gym bro bodybuilder world. It's like
Yeah.
there's something so like even the ones that are not gay, let's mean the gay ones. Like there's something kind of gay about it in the sense that like all these guys admire each other so
hmm
hard and like they're all fans of each other and they almost don't care about women.
hmm
It's like is that kind of what it's like?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly. So the dudes will just run up like so excited. They'll be like, oh, the hot chick. They'll like run right past them and be like, oh my God. So it's it can be funny, kind of funny. Like sometimes girlfriends, have like super hot girls and stuff. And they're like, I'm getting no attention hanging out with you. It's kind of weird.
That's hilarious. Is there a lot of like I would imagine maybe or not testosterone, but like steroid usage, tea, kind of like people
In the
bending
fighting
rules.
game, there
Yeah.
was definitely a lot of it back in the day. The testing's really strict now, but I don't know. I think guys somehow beat it still. I have no idea how. I mean, but it seems like some of these guys still seem like they're on it.
How do they get around it?
I have no idea. I don't know what. I think some of the a lot of people aren't. A lot of people. I think a lot more people are off now, so I think it's cleaner than it was. But I feel like I'm just guessing. But I think some of these places maybe have like they pay a lot of money for a chemist that can like change the
Oh,
compounds of the drugs. Like
yeah.
places like Russia, some of these governments can afford to spend some money to get their fighters drugs.
I'm sure there's always a fucking workaround. It's
hmm
interesting because like having experienced the first half of my life having testosterone as my main hormone and
hmm
then canceling out and now having estrogen, it's like it changed my body a lot. But I feel like if I still like was in like a physical altercation with a female, I feel like I could still fuck her up.
Yeah,
Like I don't think it just makes it so you're on par with women.
yeah, for sure it'll make you a lot weaker, but not 100%.
I don't even know about a lot weaker. I
hmm
mean, it softens you out, but like it doesn't. People have this thing about hormones that they think that it just like completely alters your body.
hmm
Which, granted, if you do tea,
Yeah,
as like if you were to do tea or something,
it'll make you bigger,
you would
but
beast out.
but
But
those bodybuilders are using massive amounts. They're lifting weights all the time. They're eating massive amounts, so it's not just gonna.
there's more to it.
Yeah, a little bit of testosterone is not just gonna blow most people up like that. People think that, but that's not what it does.
Yeah,
And that's what people don't understand. A lot of these athletes that are using, they might not look like they're on it because they're using small amounts.
yeah. When's the last time you had a fight?
It was a few years. I'm like I haven't officially retired, but I have kind of doing other things now. It's a tough sport. I did it for almost 20 years.
My
So
God, I bet that's so much wear and tear on your body, right?
yeah, surprisingly, I don't really have any bad injuries and
Oh,
don't
good.
think I'm, too bad of brain damage. That's why I'm like, you know
Maybe
what?
only
Maybe,
slightly.
yeah,
I'm
just a little bit, a
kidding.
little retarded. That's why I'm
That's
like, maybe it's time to walk away while I'm still healthy.
so. You're training people now, or
Yeah, doing a lot of stuff, business stuff, training people. There's a lot of stuff in the fight industry. It gets a little confusing, but it's the retirement's tough. The first year or so was my whole identity was fighting, fighting, fighting. So
I
it's like,
bet.
how am I gonna? So when I first stopped fighting, I was competing grappling a lot to kind of give me that thrill, and but then I wasn't really doing any business stuff, so I was starting to get bored. Like, what am I gonna do? But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's cool that you're training people now because it's kind of like you can pass on the knowledge and all the
mhm.
experience to someone else. I think that's awesome. Being able to graduate
Yeah,
out
no,
and be
that's
like,
why I like exactly. That's why I enjoy training. It's not like a ton of money in the training, but I just love doing it because it, allows me to pass the knowledge on. I have some hungry fighters I'm training, some really good guys, and then when you go corner someone for a fight, it's close to like it's the closest thing you can do to fighting. Obviously, it's different when you're in the cage, but when you're ringside coaching the guy, giving him advice, it's I get that same adrenaline jump. It's hard. The adrenaline. You could imagine, you go in a cage fighting with millions of people watching on
I
TV,
can't imagine.
trying to fight someone in a cage. You can't really,
God.
from there, how are you going to go? So everything after that is just kind of,
Yeah.
it's hard to hit that peak without actually doing it.
Yeah. Plus, despite the fact that I'm not just trying to kiss your ass here, but
Mhm.
you look a lot younger than you are.
Oh,
So I
thank
feel
you.
like people might be like retirement, but you're how old are you?
Yeah, 43, which
Yeah.
I feel way younger, and I actually still physically feel really good. I train with all the young guys, and I still do extremely well. I feel like I still could do elite fights, but it's just part of it mentally. I don't quite have the same desire. 'Cause remember some of the old fights, I'd get dropped and just jump right back up with no way I was gonna quit. Now if I get hit hard, I'm like, do I really want to fight? So once you start questioning, you have to be willing to go out there and die is the way I look at it, which sounds terrible, but you
What do
shouldn't
you
fight
mean?
unless you're willing to die in the cage, or kill someone. And I'm at a point now where I don't really want to die in the cage or kill anyone.
Oh my God, that's so.
It,
I mean, yeah. If you get cracked the right
mhm.
way, you
Yeah.
never know what could happen.
Yeah. Plus, you have to, keep hitting someone until the ref stops it. Sometimes someone could be, fucked up and you're hitting them. If the ref's not stopping it, you got to keep trying to hurt them.
That's such a crazy concept that even yeah, like if it's not over, you have to keep going,
Hmm.
even if you feel like there may be something is
Maybe you
morally
think the
wrong
ref
with
should stop
continuing.
it, but if he's not stopping it, you got to keep hitting him.
Have you ever
And I'm
been in that?
naturally a nice person, so I have to kind of psych myself up in a headspace to get a lot meaner. So before the fights, the couple weeks before, I would get a lot meaner.
Oh, wow. Have you ever been in that situation where you felt like you shouldn't keep hitting someone, but you have to?
Yeah, there was once or twice where I thought I should have stopped a little early, but luckily, there's nothing that went like way past it where you're like, come on, just stop it. I've seen a couple fights like that where you're like, come on, ref, this dude is just.
Oh,
You see a
shit.
fighter look up to the ref a few times, just like, come on, ref, this dude is
Oh,
just like,
God.
don't make me kill this guy.
Oh, fuck. That's so
Doesn't
crazy.
happen too often. Luckily, most of the refs are good, but there's been a couple times I've seen that. It's just like, oh, come on, just this guy is
Ugh.
really fucked up. Stop the fight.
Yeah. Do you ever get frustrated with, and maybe this isn't your experience, but do you ever get frustrated with sort of the reputation that you might be violent in real life? Because what's interesting is like, so you have
Hmm.
like a funny, like Twitter beef with Michael.
Hmm.
It's obviously not real. Y'all are friends, but like people take it so seriously. You'll be
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm going to choke you. And people are like, oh yeah, Jake Show is really going to fucking fuck Michael Malice
Mhm.
up. It's like, he's not going to do that in real life. Do you get
No.
frustrated that people think you're violent in real life?
No, no, not really. It's not that big of a deal, but it's kind of funny. I mean, obviously, a lot of times if you first start dating a girl, they're like, "Oh, the guy's a fighter. You better be careful. They might like abuse you." But I think it's like, come on, fighters are
Oh,
no
that's
more
so
likely
gross.
to hit a girl than a non-fighter. I mean, there's been a couple cases of domestic violence in fighting, but I think probably no
Yeah.
more than in the regular world.
Well, I think that it's like many other things. Like, I think of like my kind of public image as people think that I'm like super intense and a bitch and a
Hmm.
loudmouth and shit, which I am sometimes. But for the most part in real life, I'm actually the opposite. Like, I can get kind of shy sometimes and
Hmm.
I'm not as intense. So I feel like to be that intense in the ring, you kind
Yeah.
of have to balance it out with being just a nice, easygoing guy out of it.
I think that's what it is because the training and the fighting is so intense. Most fighters are chill. We get all of our anger out there. I don't want to walk around all angry.
Yeah, 100%. So what's next for you? What's your kind of such a
We moved to Austin.
good, good. I think you'd fit in so well here, especially with like our friend group out here. It'd be so
Mhm.
good.
It seems like the spot. Everything's happening here.
Yeah, you can really mold this city into what you want. So bring the whole MMA
Yeah.
family over here.
That's the one thing Austin's missing. It has vibrant scenes everywhere, but there's no fight scene yet. Joe brought comedy here. This guy John Donna here brought jiu-jitsu here. Now I need someone to bring the fight scene here.
Yeah. You said Alex Jones is the one celebrity you really want to meet. So what is it that you like about Alex Jones?
I just think he's just so interesting and unique and funny. There's no one like Alex Jones. He's just like different than anyone else. He's a character. I think he's extremely misunderstood. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't agree with everything he says. I think he's a little crazy, but that's why I love him and it turned out a lot of things he said is true. Is the funny part. He just gets a few big things wrong.
There's the Alex Jones was right tip jar meme.
Right?
I think that the way I describe him is like he's the internet's crazy uncle. And I say that with as much affection as possible. I like him. He says shit that it's kind of like that uncle that's like maybe like a little tipsy at the party and you're like, okay. But then every once in a while he drops a bomb and you're like,
Oh
wait,
shit.
that's fucking true.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the people that don't like him are usually people that don't know him or they haven't watched him. They've watched what the media said about him. Kind of like people that hate Joe Rogan. They don't listen to his show. They listen to what the media says about him.
Yeah. And you know what it is to just be a
Yeah.
public figure. And I would say 70% of the shit that's said about us is like a complete lie.
Yeah, that's what you learn. You learn media is a complete joke, and once you see them write about you and it's just completely fake, you're like, you realize, oh, the media really is fake. And
Yeah.
that was my favorite part about Trump, calling out the fake media. Because people started freaking out when he first started calling them the fake news, and they started being like, looking and being like, oh wait, the news really is fake.
That was, I think, I personally think Trump's time has passed. I think
Yeah,
we're
I
ready for
agree.
new blood, new energy. I'm looking at DeSantis. I'm looking at a couple others. But I think that um, setting aside all the mistakes Trump made, which I think there were many,
Yeah.
lockdowns, empowering government even more in some certain aspects. I think that the big thing we can take away from his administration is like people did grow a really healthy distrust of the media and
Hmm.
contempt for these journalists and the corporate press. And I think that that is like the main thing that I wouldn't take back the presidency
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah, no, I think Trump wasn't a great leader, but I think he exposed the whole system, like how much they hated him and how willing they were to fight against him and how they were willing to bend truth and censor Twitter and censor him from Twitter. It just showed you like, wow, there's really a system against this guy.
100%. That was the biggest thing. Well, listen, Jake, I feel like we could talk for 5 hours.
So yeah, it was great,
Yeah.
great chatting. I'm sure we'll do this another time.
100% next time you're in Austin. And so now I'm pretty sure Alex is here because Alex Jones is filming right after you.
I don't hear him yelling, so I don't know.
Maybe. I feel like he should be here unless he's super late. But thank you so much for coming on. Where can people search you up and what should people look out for?
Jake Shields, AJJ Twitter, just Jake Shields Instagram. Got my clothing line, American Jiu Jitsu at AmericanFight.com. I think that's about it.
Amazing. Go follow Jake and I will see you guys in the next episode.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you.